Alright guys, HyDra back again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. The CDL is finally back in action with a major elephant in the room. The OpTic, Scump and HECZ lawsuit against the CDL we discussed in some depth earlier today. I was not expecting during all this drama the OpTic watch party and the Scump watch party to go live again as has normally been the case. But that's exactly what goes down. Scump and HECZ responding in terms of what they can say for now to everything that's going on behind the scenes. A couple of very interesting CDL matches as well that we definitely have to dive into. Very much interested your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I greatly appreciate it. If you guys missed everything that happened this morning, probably just check out the video from earlier today, to be fair. Anna Apacella was logging on to the title and been like, alright, morning everyone. And then, oh, here we go again. Even Patty P says the following. I thought was pretty funny, you know, getting these messages from Activision and whatever. Missed all these phone calls. Of course, I'm sure Patty P's also looking at this opportunity in terms of Ubisoft and XDefiant and everything like that. So, okay, well, you know, depending what happens next with the Call of Duty League, could be a decent time if XDefiant is actually any good and they can make something work from a competitive perspective, which to be fair has been the intention of that game from day one. Maybe there's a future in that to some degree, but lots even more to say on this, to be honest, going down. There was also this noted by James Fudge here that we didn't really discuss earlier on today, but there was one line that went as follows. On a conference call, one Activision executive explicitly told Rodriguez, that of course being HECZ, that he was not the type of owner Activision wanted for the league. Activision made clear to Rodriguez that he would be required to be a partner with a billionaire investor who looked like the ideal, you know, or basically leave the professional COD market altogether. So that is really quite something. Now, look, I don't really know if the whole race ethnicity question is being implied there. I'm not necessarily so sure that it is, but maybe we'll get commented on it at some point. I think it's more so, maybe from my perspective, you guys might disagree, but my kind of read on this is Activision wanted the investors to be, you know, basically like these guys, right? Like the billionaire sports owners, rather than the guys that, okay, maybe don't have the same capital and funding that those guys do, but the guys such as HECZ that actually built the scene from the start, right? Which, you know, look, you can say what you want about HECZ, but I think if anyone was in that type of position being told that, you'd feel massively disrespected. And it's obviously not just this reason why the lawsuit is coming to light, but it's probably, well, at least certainly part of it, because it's in the lawsuit itself. The full lawsuit as well is actually available. I'll just link this down below if you guys, I'll put it in the description, 44 pages, whatever it is, of all the documentation is. If you guys really do want to go through it, or if you are, you know, an expert on law, or you've passed the bar or whatever, then feel free to go and have a look and let us know what you think. But that's all going to be in the description box. There was also a couple of other tweets floating around, just really being brought up from back in the day, because some of these tweets that Scump made at the time, they still exist, you know. And, well, we didn't, obviously we talked about it at the time when they happened on the channel a few years ago now, but we did not really talk about them that much over the last few years. But what Scump said about being forced to sign contracts, it's interesting in hindsight really that, you know, Scump never deleted these tweets. He left them all up because, well, that's a trail of evidence, if you want to put it that way, in terms of what the CDL, how they were operating, how Activision Blizzard were operating. And of course, they form part of the base to which Scump and HECZ are taking their suit against Activision and effectively the CDL. Even this from Doug, who of course was a player at the time. I guess, you know, we're talking MW19, so substitute he was that season for the Subliners. But yeah, remember they told us we can't make 1v1 videos against each other for Yeezys anymore on our own YouTube channels. I remember in the early part of the CDL, they were going crazy in terms of what the players were allowed and not allowed to do because they thought it was super serious. Over the last few years, the amount of fines and the general feeling around the professionalism of the league has definitely, you know, rescinded to some degree, probably because they realise that it's all a bit hopeless, and that's actually definitely not for the betterment of the league. Like, silencing players, shutting down the personalities is absolutely the wrong thing to do, and I think that either they've realised that or they simply don't have the staff there anymore to actually enforce the initial vision that they had. But we've seen lots of evidence of this over the last few years, really. Even this, as Scump said, I actually kind of forgot about this tweet, but he replied to Nick Merckx, again, back in the day, "Brother Nick, they're doing us dirty, and most are scared to speak out because they're going to fine us, has made me question continuing to compete." So, of course, Scump at the time, and still remains the case of the present day, has more power and resources, and more of a voice, of course, than many of the pro players did at the time, and of course continuing as well to this present day. So, you know, I mean, all these tweets are still up there, I'm pretty sure, and still available. So Scump obviously has those as an arsenal to say, look, these type of things were going on back then, and, well, to put towards the case they're trying to make against Activision Blizzard, at the end of the day, it's still two individuals with, I'm sure, an army of lawyers behind them, and I'm sure that HECZ has done his due diligence to believe that they might have a case here, but of course Activision are effectively, you know, with Microsoft now in play, basically a $1 trillion company. Like, they're not going to be struggling to get the top lawyers here on the case if they want to pursue this, and, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if, even if HECZ and Scump have a good case here, it's not implausible that Activision could find ways to drag this out, to make the litigation drag on, to effectively bleed them dry. I mean, look, I'm sure HECZ and Scump have money behind them to put into this lawsuit because, you know, they want a lot of damages. I mean, we saw the $680 million number floating around. There was another like $120 million number, but I believe the 680 number might actually be accurate, but it's just spread over loads of different allegations that they're claiming, you know, recompense for or whatever. So I'm sure they're well equipped, but at the same time, Activision Blizzard are definitely well equipped, and Microsoft is definitely well equipped to fight this from their end. So it remains as fascinating to me as it was this morning. But I guess the question was going to be, are we going to get this addressed really? Is Scump going to say anything? Is HECZ going to say anything? And we're going to have any, you know, further updates on the case? Because we will, every few days or every few hours, I don't know really, get some big changes to what exactly is going on there behind the scenes. And, you know, this is going to drag on. I think there's no doubt about that. I expected, to be honest, at around about this time this year, there would be some sort of update as to the future of the league, some sort of, you know, maybe the owners would bring something against the CDL. Like, I was expecting it to happen, just because it's happened in the Overwatch League as well, and it seemed like only a matter of time, but for it to happen in this way is definitely surprising to me. So Scump says in Nadeshot's chat, I'm back tomorrow, Nadeshot, kind of saying like the watch party will be back for the Saturday when there were 3 matches, and I guess it was a big question as well, would the watch party even go ahead, right? Because Scump and HECZ are suing the league, and yet, you know, we're getting the watch party underway to watch the CDL matches, everything like that. And obviously the league could try and shut them down. The league technically would be within their rights, I guess, to rescind the watch party allowance because they decide who gets to watch party type thing. I don't think they would do that, though, because that actually strengthens the case of HECZ and Scump, that if they are truly a monopoly on the space, and then they're basically shutting down those that are, you know, bringing this case against them, that's obviously not going to look either. Would they still do it? I mean, let's not forget, they DMCA'd Scump's stream just the other week for streaming on both Twitch and YouTube, despite the fact that they weren't actually showing the gameplay on Twitch. So, you know, I wouldn't put it past them. But for now, at least as I'm recording this video, the Scump watch party is still live, and I'm sure that Activision have other things to think about. So as the stream began, HECZ addressed this and said, look, we're not really going to be discussing in too much detail here. Scump says it's an elephant in the room. Basically, they'll say more in due course when they can, but for now, focusing on the COD is the way to go.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome, welcome, welcome to the OpTic Scump watch party. I know that there are a lot of questions that you guys want answers for, but at the moment, Seth and I have nothing to say. As usual, and it has been since 2005, we're going to focus on Call of Duty and esports and trying to continue to grow the space as we have for over a decade. So, with that said, we have the usual suspects. We have my man Money Biscuit in the end with the White Sox hat, the better baseball team in Chicago. We have my man Zinni looking as fly as ever.
Whoa. Call him the right name.
MettalZ?
That's MettalZ.
MettalZ. That's right.
Scumps and MettalZ.
Scumps and MettalZ. What's going on, everybody? Yeah, like Hector said, elephant in the room. Don't want to talk about it. We're going to keep this... We're going to keep it about Call of Duty today, man. We're going to keep it about COD.
It's the standard procedure, of course, really not discussing in great detail what's happening during the lawsuit because, you know, it's just standard the way things tend to go. I wonder if over time we'll have anything more on this, whether some information will slip out here and there. Like, I'm sure there's going to be updates to this over time. And yeah, I'm just still mind blown at the situation that we all woke up to this morning, certainly in Europe anyway, because it happened while we were all asleep during the course of the night. But they were watching a couple of CDL matches. OpTic play this Sunday. They play Thieves in what's actually going to be a really interesting series. I will also mention on Thieves, this is the strength of schedule the CDL put together. Now, just to note that these are always not, I wouldn't say biased, but you've got to understand, if you're the 12th CDL team, your average opponent you play will be 5.5th in the league, if that makes sense. Whereas if you're the first CDL team, the average opponent you'll play will be 6.5th, because you can't play yourself. So if you're the number 1 seed, you will play on average, theoretically, the average between the 2nd and the 12th. Whereas if you're 12th, you'll play the average between the 1st and the 11th. So naturally, if you're at the bottom of the league, your schedule will look harder. So there will be a natural statistical trend towards the teams at the top of this are more likely to be the teams towards the bottom of the league, because they have fewer points, therefore their opponents have more points. So that is to some degree in play here, but mainly this still gets a good point across, because Ravens and Legion, they're kind of near the bottom of the league, but still they have very easy schedules compared to what they could have. So the hardest schedules though goes to Thieves, kind of hands down. Their average CDL opponent this split has 86 points. Ravens, their average opponent, has 52 points, which is quite the discrepancy. And Thieves play Ultra, FaZe and OpTic, Soda, Rocker, which is a pretty tough stage for them. The easiest ones on paper go to OpTic, go to Surge, and then go to Vegas and Raven. So both of these teams, especially at the bottom here, have definitely doable runs. I mean, Ravens are the only team, it seems, at least on this, apart from, well, Boston, Ultra and Subliners, but there's only a few teams that don't play Ultra. Actually, Gorillas, again, are one of these teams, but of those teams that don't play Ultra, they also don't play FaZe, which is a nice edge for Ravens to have. We'll discuss their series, of course, up against Subliners in just a couple of seconds. So this is what you might expect to happen here, but Thieves, bit of a trial by fire, right? And same story for Miami. I mean, they played Ultra today, they play FaZe like tomorrow or whatever, like the next game that Miami plays against FaZe, which is not exactly the start they would have liked. Also to note that Terminal was the map to go from the map pool, of course. This is the hardpoint pick rates percentage of the time in the series. So Rio in for hardpoint for Terminal does make sense based on this, but there's an argument that on the new patch update, Terminal's actually better, whereas, you know, I'm not such a big fan of sub-base anyway, but I do think the new Terminal was better. It's still not great, I understand it. Rio is, though, a better map, and we saw it played today, and it's a fun watch, there's no doubt about it. Lots of gunfights, lots of action. It's a pretty small map. It's not the best map I've ever seen in my life. It's not Raid, it's not Standoff, but it'll do. It does the job for sure. I think it's a better watch than Terminal, and it was a pretty close fought game one. MettalZ was going off. You will, of course, note here, I'm pretty sure, and already my eyes have somewhat adjusted to this, but the font is different, is it not? Am I tripping here that the font is different to what it was before? I'm almost certain that it is. And, well, at least in the scoreboard, so at the top of the screen, and then the time, I don't know what was going on today, but the time on the scoreboard was just not working at all. And we got moments like this where, I mean, this was game one. You could see nothing. So it was a nightmare to try and get the stats working on the breaker point side, because no hill time, no nothing. I don't know if this has anything to do with the observers, because they fired the observers, didn't fire them, but they let them go. I'm pretty sure some of those guys are back, if not many of those guys are back, doing it on a more freelance basis. So I'm hoping at least that's the case, because I haven't really seen any confirmation of that, but I'm pretty sure that's what might have happened here, because someone's observing these games today, and I'm pretty sure it's at least the crew or part of the crew that were doing it before. So this is how things went game one, and then Ultra at the end just pulled away, Scrap went off. Erik had a hard time here, right, because the big talking point really for Miami was ErikBooM's in, JurNii's gone. So is that good or bad? Is that going to help them online? Big questions. But Ultra are just like, they are the final boss right now, and I mean, Scrap just turned up the game too. Like, both maps, again, it's the classic feeling you get with Ultra. Maybe a team keeps it close, but when push comes to shove, they're just better. Scrap 14-8, 2700 damage. First time they've played that map. Not bad from, you know, arguably best player in the game. There's a few candidates for best player in the game, but Scrap's up there, CleanX is up there, a few of the Ultra guys are up there, Insight's up there, Envoy isn't far away. Like, it's pretty remarkable how good this team is. And yeah, CDL HECZ Essential with another bagger here, because Scrap was talking trash in Spanish, you know, he learns a bit of Spanish. He's done this before, and he'll do it again. And we saw his initial reaction here. Welcome to the league, little man, ErikBooM. So, you know, I feel bad for Erik, right? Because I'm sure he was nervous for this. He comes into this series, and he does get kind of slammed, let's be straight up. But, yeah, I mean, he had a 0.7 KD here in the match. So it wasn't pretty, but definitely a trial by fire, right? You come in, your first CDL match is against Toronto, and your next one is against FaZe. It's pretty ugly. Does this mean Heretics are bad? Like, maybe, but to be fair, I mean, the maps were not completely one-sided, but it always felt like Ultra had the edge, and, it was a 3-0 at the end of the day, so Miami will need to bounce back, but we've said that before. And the final series of the day then, an absolute breakdown here. It was funny, really, because I predicted Ravens to win this one, and I was buzzing after game one, because nobody else had predicted Carolina to win, and I was like, okay, and I'm not mad that I predicted this, just because I think given the circumstances, it was a good risk to take, and I thought this series was closer than people were giving it credit for, but yeah, the way they lost this one, look, we've seen a few breakdowns this season, Vegas especially responsible for them. Game one as well was interesting because Subliners really should have won this game one. Ravens somehow won it. HyDra definitely made a play at one point where he could have got some hill time. He decided not to. And if that was Shotzzy, you can't even imagine the criticism he would have been getting. But and to be fair, HyDra was catching some flack for this as well because they did lose the map. They didn't, however, lose the series. Just about. They lose the sub base. They then get slammed here on the invasion search. I was like, oh my god, here we go. Somehow Ravens are back in the search and destroy department. They would trash a search and destroy, and that was New York's best mode, of course. But yeah, they smoked him here. I mean, Gwyn went off. TJ had some great moments here as well to put them up 2-0 in the series. And at that point, Ravens are thinking, okay, fantastic. Can't possibly bottle this one from here, correct? So they win the search and destroy. They then lose a very tightly fought control. Even the final round here, Ravens had defense. Round 5, they'll have felt confident they could have closed that one out. They didn't. They even still had a chance at the end there. To be fair, Subliners nearly bottled their offense, to be honest. But yeah, they eventually go down. The map 4 wasn't even close, actually, at this point. Subliners just actually turned it around. HyDra played really well. I mentioned this in the Dope Chick episode we did with Trey and Ace the other day, that Felony was my man to watch on this team because he was getting slammed, giga slammed online going into the major. He played much better on LAN, but let's not forget, that was the GodRx role who was also getting slammed online, and that was a big reason why they were struggling. To be fair, Fellow played much better on LAN, but he had a 0.7 like both of the series they played online. So my question was, is that going to come back again, or is Fellow going to be able to maintain the level? But in both of the hard points here, Fellow was having a torrid time, and it was certainly the case again in the map 4. And then map 5 was a bit of a mess. There were some resets and stuff, but you could just tell that the vibes were just chalked on Ravens. Like, I don't really know why, because they still had a chance here in the map 5, but they just looked completely dead. Like, they'd basically already lost the series and got reverse swept. So, I thought Subliners kind of lost full after losing the game 1, but to be fair, they rebounded in the control. Ravens had no mental rebound factor here. So, bit concerned for that, but also, Subliners just don't look like the world machine we expected coming into the season. So difficult to have too many takeaways from this. But lots, of course, to talk about tomorrow. Very much interested in your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care. And I'll see you next time.